the realization of this project.
That's right.
They called on all policymakers. That's opposition and the government side. So you can't say that it's biased in favor of the government or biased against the government. These were over 300 people representing labor, business, religious organizations, women's organizations, youth organizations, and Aboriginal organizations. And faith-based organizations. So, Mr. Speaker, as politicians, as members of the parliament elected here, we have a responsibility to our membership, to our supporters, and voices of the people who may not have voted for us, who may have voted for us. All of us sitting in this house have a moral obligation. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the people of this country, want a Mila. The people of this country want a Mila. They want to transform Mr. Speaker, I don't need you to invite me to stand for this. I don't need you to have. I will let you speak. But Mr. Speaker, the issue of Omega isn't only about agreement between the sides. It's about bringing back the issues to this House. There was a time and it was not negativized. We can bring it back to this House. And we can bring it back with the support of all in this House. Mr. Speaker, the linkages are there. We already have had in this House the anti-money laundering is threatened. But we may not take it.
What is going on? Yeah, honorable members, Mr. Nagano, to quite skillfully as a politician, opened the door and he spoke about terrorist statements and many other things that didn't touch directly on the motion. There was no point of order raised against him. Because as an astute politician, he sees the moment and the space and he used it well. Mr. Shearer is speaking and I would ask that she be allowed the chance to speak without being insulted. References to thief, rubbish, and I'd ask that we conduct ourselves properly, refrain from making statements like that, because they really speak, if you're going to speak like that, it means that you're defining who you are as well. And all of us are under the microscope here. So I'm appealing to all members to refrain from speaking to each other like that. All of us carry the honorific honorable. All of us have earned the right to be here, and that right must be respected. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speak for the next hour.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Granger and the President also exchanged letters this morning. And I just want to read one part from the President's letter to Mr. Granger.
The objective of the postponement and the justification for the request by the executive was based on the best intentions to allow good faith efforts between the government and the opposition to reach agreement on the way forward on parliamentary matters relating to the Amaila hydroelectric power project. And the other paragraph that says, I reject the statement that the quote, which is in Mr. Granger's letter, that the executive branch has usurped the authority and functions of the Speaker of the National Assembly, and reaffirm that our intentions were based on the hope that we, government and opposition, would by way of postponement have the time and the opportunity to continue to find a resolution on matters relating to the Amaila hydroelectric power project in order to allow it to proceed with the support of the National Assembly before the recess. Mr. Speaker, we continue to stand by the reasons we asked for the postponement. We are disturbed by the statements by two leading members of opposition parties in the House today, and we will reassess the situation, as we do all the time. But Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of any of us in this House to lose an opportunity which the government was trying to provide for us to get together. Now, whether that meant we reach agreement in all, or in part, on 3/4, or none, that it beholds us is our responsibility. And I've been around enough in politics to have seen enough of this, where at the worst of times, with violence out on the road in 1997, I've been around long enough to know in the midst of the violence, talks were going on, and agreements were reached, Mr. Speaker. I've been around long enough in the 2001 post-election violence. While the violence was going on, the leaders were talking. And yes, it ended up with the Hertz-Marston Accord. It ended up with the St. Lucia Accord. It ended up with a parliamentary reform that we didn't even envisage when we started in 1999. Mr. Speaker, the danger that faces this House and the danger that faces the political environment in this country is the myopic approach to politics.
When in the ninth parliament I use that word,
Yes.
Mr. Lumumba took up objection, strong objection to me using the word myopia.
I didn't refer to anyone though.
I
I said one.
But the point I really wanted to make is that I don't consider to be an unparliamentary term. So you may proceed.
But I was very careful not to put anybody myopic. Quite a few of us in this room are visually challenged and are myopic, but I didn't want to in any way affront anybody. But sir, one of the things that the dangers that faces us in Guyana politically, in the political realm, is short-sightedness, is our ability to know what the battles are at which time, which ones we will fight now down to the teeth, and which ones we can keep on fighting and try to reach agreement on. Mr. Speaker, we are at a critical point in this country. Critical point in this country. And I've said to you, sir, before, and I'll say it in this House, that what is going on will end up an egg on everybody's face. So if this behavior of not agreeing to the postponement, or you don't like the postponement, or whatever, and this view that there's nothing we can accomplish in 13 days, then, sir, it is not only going to be a minor that's going to be lost. It's not only, sir, government that's going to be lost, but you are going to lose. You are going to lose. The people of this country are not stupid. They're extremely intelligent.
Let us worry with
They understand. And so, Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and just to sum up, precedent has been set in the parliaments long before me. And just, there's a little booklet I came across today, which I didn't know that the former clerk was writing. The former clerk, Mr. Frank Lorraine. He talks, it's a little story, it's anecdotal, but it has archival material from Parliament, the story of the calling of a parliamentary sitting in 1972. An interesting debate, an interesting issue, but Mr. Speaker, parliamentary are written in the standing orders. We have gone through we went through parliamentary revision of standing orders in 92, 97, 2005, 2010. And we've made amendments in this parliament with other amendments. As we go along, we learn and we change. But the prerogative of government to postpone a sitting, there is such a prerogative. It may not be in the standing orders. But Mr. Speaker, just like the government, when a date hasn't been fixed, can name a date without consultation with anybody. It can also, based on what are not frivolous issues. Mr. Speaker, you and everybody would be in their absolute right to criticize the government if we had said and written to you, sir, postpone, because just postpone.
You don't want to hear about the convention.
But Mr. Speaker, we have put the reasons which we think are laudable, are in the national interest, in the interest of our country, and where we believe and we hold out the hope that we can still find a resolution. Mr. Speaker, I therefore support the Prime Minister, and I call on the opposition, as I do every time, to support us in moving in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, a grave danger has been averted in this parliament. That is the attempt at the usurpation and the hijacking of the powers of this parliament. And in particular, of your power under the standing orders. Standing Order 8, Rule 1, says this in the area. The adjournment of the Assembly shall be to the next sitting. On the 18th of July, the adjournment was to the 25th of July. This sitting, sir. Standing Order Rule 8, Rule 2 says, if during the adjournment of the Assembly, it is represented to the Speaker by the government or the speakers of the opinion that the public interest requires that the Assembly should meet on a day earlier. There is no power under the standing orders to postpone an adjourned date. There's none. It contemplates, perhaps in cases of emergency, that you bring forward no power to postpone till later date. And therefore, sir, when we received this missive from the Honorable Prime Minister, letter dated July 24th, 2013, we were particularly struck by these words in the second paragraph. The government has decided to postpone the sitting from Thursday, July 25th, 2013 to Wednesday, August the 7th, 2013.
Executive lawlessness. After consulting with them.
Sir, there is no reference whatsoever to your imprimatur, to your power under the standing orders. None whatsoever. And it constitutes a blatant and arrogant act on the part of the Prime Minister. Another attempt at an incursion into the powers of the National Assembly, so this already.
We have to send you.
Sir, but what are the reasons given for such an act? I again refer members to dismiss it. And it is for the objective of restoring these items and ensuring their safe passage to the National Assembly. These items, sir, are the hydroelectric power bill and the motion on the debt ceiling. That is what is that is the reason given, sir, for this missive to the Honorable House. But sir, let's examine the basis of that proposal given for this letter. The motion on debt ceiling on the 18th did not pass. equally the hydroelectric bill, sir. So why postpone it to the 7th? Is that to suggest that the motion on debt ceiling could return to this honorable house on the 7th of August? Let me respectfully refer members to Standing Order 26, Rule E. Rule E, sir. And it says this: admissibility is captioned admissibility of motions. In order that a motion may be admissible, it shall satisfy the following conditions, namely, it sets out something, we reach at E. It shall not receive discussion of a matter which has been discussed in the same session. Sir, when does this session end? This session ends. Relying on those assurances. We brought up the bills, sir. And lo and behold, sir, when all 4 bills were way up front now, and you call on the minister, sir, responsible, the minister was mute. The honorable prime minister was mute. I don't know, I don't understand, therefore, why dismiss it, but I think it's in the agenda. Recognizing now that these bills will be debated and you can't remain mute, they decided the first tactic is to unilaterally adjourn the parliament. Back up the adjournment with some protests outside on the road.
Region 5 workers.
Sir, that has failed miserably. That has failed miserably. And what we don't want to lose sight of, sir, is this: that this adjournment being made today must not obfuscate the attempt to adjourn it unilaterally, sir, by that letter. And we must appreciate that a great danger was averted with this man's National Assembly, sir. Sir, it has been contended that there were previous postponements. And, you know, we say in the law, as you well know, Mr. Speaker, the perpetuation of a wrong doesn't make it right. And it is this Parliament that has to put things right. With this majority that we have, we must end the lawlessness, sir, that I have done now before. So, Mr. Speaker, for the first time, we're hearing that we have problems with 2 of the local government bills. That's right. But, sir, I am bemused. Because last week...
Just a clarification, Mr. William. What was said on the last occasion is that government has discomfort with 2 bills, but notwithstanding its discomfort, it was prepared to proceed with them. Despite its discomfort. That was...
The Honorable Prime Minister just made a statement.
No, Prime Minister just said that despite its discomfort, government is prepared to proceed with the bill. That is a repetition of what was said last.
Yes, sir, but I'm coming to that, sir. But that, sir, that notwithstanding the utterances, as I alluded to earlier, we have relied on all the assurances that we want local government reform and local government elections. Now we hear they have some problem with the bills, but they will go ahead with it. But so where is that? So these bills came to this honorable house consensually. Consensually, sir. We have consented to bring the report and the bills to this honorable house by consent. And sir, I am proud of the members of that committee, including the honorable members Tishera Lee Kamar and Steve. And the only provision, the only clause that we didn't have consent on, sir, was the composition of the local government commission. That's the only one. And that was because, sir, notwithstanding, sir, the report of the joint government, said quite clearly that it is recommended, and this is consensual too, that the commission should comprise of 7 members. 7 members. And that's what we did. The last day at the last minute, an attempt was made to add an 8th member. That is what happened. To change, to move the goalposts. And therefore, sir, we see there's no genuine problems that the government has with these bills. But what we do know, as they have done in the last 12 years, they are vigorously opposed.
Resisting.
They are resisting. We have been pleading with them. Let our people go. Let our people go. When they say we wish to maintain a stranglehold, sir, on our people in their communities in which they live. They do not wish to empower the people in the communities in which they live, as is guaranteed by the Constitution of this land, sir. That is what they have been doing for the last 12 years. The bills are in the House, and it's the same dilatoriness that we have, sir. The same dilatoriness. And that is the real reason for the unilateral attempt to join this sitting, sir, from today to the 7th. And when you adjourn to the 7th, knowing that the last day for this session is the 9th, what are you suggesting to us? What are you suggesting to us? You have 2 telecommunications bills on the hard paper. We don't know if this is government business. We don't know when this is going to come on the hard paper. We know the minor bills can't come back on emotion. We know that. And so what would happen, sir? If no way would be able, if the government has its way, to pass those 4 local government bills in this House. And that is the whole reason, that's the entire basis for what is happening in this honorable House. We call on the PPP government, sir, to let the Guyanese people go. Let them go. Let's have these bills, sir. I call on them. So, Mr. Speaker, in the light of those premises, sir, we call on the government to get on the phone and call the Honorable Member back of the side. Let them know that they're not terrorists in the side of the house.
All right.
We gentlemen and honorable women in this house. He must feel free to come and use his voice. And present these bills to this honorable House so that we can move on with the business of the Guyanese people. Thank you, sir. We cannot support the motion of the Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to make one thing very, very elusive, and that is that on this side of the House, we respect the confidentiality of conversations which are the precursor to agreements.
Right.
I want to make that very, very clear. And that where the Honorable Member, Madam Gail Teixeira, spoke about what happened before the Hardmanston Accord, the conversations which took place that led to the Hardmanston Accord, those things were not bandied about. Those things were not reported here in Parliament as if they were to bolster anybody's case. It was never done in that manner, please. And so, Mr. Speaker, the conversation which I have...
Mr. Speaker, if you allow me, there is nothing I said here that is confidential. The records of the discussions and the reporting in the press of 97 to 2003 are fully property, and they were also debated in this House, sir.
Mr. Speaker, I am talking about now we fast forward to 2013. We are talking about conversations held between the representative of the APNU and the representative of the government. Without Luncheon is not here to represent anything, I have to respond to some of the statements made by Madam Gail Teixeira about communication between myself and the Honorable
It's
Doctor.
not true that Roger sent you a message?
I am going to read it.
Mr.
Mr. Speaker, I will read the message that was sent to me.
Sorry. Ms. Isaacs, have we taken telephone messages?
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Madam Gail Teixeira referred to these conversations and made her case based on that conversation. I would like to set the record straight after the
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, this was the text sent to me by the Honorable Dr. Luncheon at 3 minutes after 3 yesterday. 3 minutes after 3. He says, I am asked to inform you that we plan to postpone tomorrow's sitting to Wednesday, 6th of August. You're right, yes? Thus, allowing time for both sides to negotiate the return of the what Dr. Luncheon was saying was communicating a decision that had been made by the government at 3 minutes after 3 yesterday. That they were postponing the sitting of this assembly. Mr. Speaker, let me go on chronologically. At about 5 o'clock, the Honorable Prime Minister sent a letter which was copied to the Leader of the Opposition about 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, stating that the sitting of Thursday, July 25th is Government's Day, and the government has decided to postpone the sitting from Thursday, July 25th to Wednesday, August 7, 2013.
They have no such authority.
So, Dr. Lunchen's email at text at 3 minutes after 3, the Prime Minister's letter at 5 o'clock, and at 7 o'clock last night, when we were meeting to discuss this matter, the Leader of the Opposition, please sir, I recall it in my hearing, I sitting there next to him, called the Honorable Speaker and asked him whether he was aware of this letter by the Prime Minister, stating that the Parliament would be adjourned to the 7th of August. And the Speaker said he was not aware.
No.
At 7 p.m. last night, no one could have found me because I was in church. I did speak to the Leader of the Opposition at about 6, but I confirmed that
I spoke to the clerk, I was aware of the letter,
Yes.
and I was in the process of getting a copy of the letter. So at 7 o'clock I had been aware of the letter.
It's
But I
around
was
6:30.
incommunicado.
But, Mr. Speaker, Madam Gail Teixeira read an extract. Madam Gail Teixeira read an extract from the letter which was sent by the Honorable President to the Leader of the Opposition. And she read a particular extract. But I would like to read another piece of it. It says in paragraph 2 of the letter, Madam Mr. Speaker, that the Speaker approved the government's request as evidenced by the circular which was dispatched to all members of Parliament by mail and electronic means that same afternoon. Stating that the sitting was postponed to August 7th. So, Mr. Speaker, 3 o'clock, Dr. Lunchen's text saying that we have decided to postpone. 5 o'clock, the Prime Minister's letter said we have decided to postpone. In and around 6:30, 7 o'clock, a request from the leader of the opposition to confirm that the Speaker was aware of this, and subsequently this morning, this letter coming to say that the Speaker had approved of this. Mr. Speaker, we need to put things in place and in perspective. Yes, sir?
You send a letter that
A letter from the President of Guyana, dated July 25, 2013, to Mr. David Rachel, leader of the opposition, says at paragraph 2, the Speaker approved the government's request as evidenced by the circular. The Speaker approved the government's request. Mr. Speaker, nowhere until the Prime Minister stood up here this afternoon was there any such word like request.
Not in his letter.
Not in his letter, not in the text from Dr. Luncheon to me or anywhere that there was any request.
Directive.
So what we are getting here, Mr. Speaker, is a directive from the government that this parliament is to be adjourned to a date of the 7th of August. And for those reasons, I wish to support the other members of the opposition that we cannot approve of this motion by the President.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I'm sure that many of us and many of our citizens out there are wondering what is going on. I think that all of us have been saying since the results of the elections of 2011 that we are into a new dispensation. We are into new circumstances. And Mr. Speaker, I think that's where we are. I think these new circumstances suggest that we would enter an era when some sorts of trading, horse trading as is said, horse trading would have been much more in order of today. And Mr. Speaker, honorable members, last Thursday, I thought that we were making this step into this new era of trading and horse trading. And I will repeat it again, that for at least half an hour, we were at a position that we were going to go forward last Thursday with the hydroelectric amendment, with approval for the amendment to the Hydroelectric Act, and also approval to the motion with the raising of the debt ceiling. And we, on the government side, were going to support, in spite of our grave misgivings, concerns, we were going to support all 4 of the local government bills so that the Guyanese people would have both local government elections and a minor. That was the position that I, for half an hour, I thought that we had made a great step into this era, this new dispensation. And so we were greatly disappointed. I was greatly disappointed. I felt greatly let down. I felt that an agreement that we had reached had been pulled back. It was not us who got out to the response down, Mr. Raptor. Mr. Speaker, on the top about, I think the honorable leader of the approaches. But we all know the saying about whether it is that Muhammad will go to the mountain or the mountain will go to Muhammad.
When I say there was no approaches, Mr. Prime Minister.
Let me say, let me record.
Subject to the record, my understanding was, hearing you this afternoon, there was an agreement, there was nothing on the table right now to even suggest talks. I certainly got the impression that there were no approaches or no talks or even on the horizon. And nothing was likely to be more than 30 minutes.
We haven't proceeded. But certainly that was one was to notice that there were no talks or no plans or anything.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we do believe that statements were made by our side, and even by the President, which confirm that the door is open to reach an agreement that can see the Guyanese people having both a minor and a minor. But I was saying, Mr. Speaker, that we know the saying about whether it is that Muhammad will go to the mountain or the mountain will come to Muhammad. So I am acting on the presumption, Mr. Speaker, that both of us want these things. The government side wants it, the opposition side wants it, and I would have presumed that since last Thursday, the opposition too would have felt motivated to seek some accord so that we can get this agreement back on the table. So our approach to defer or to postpone this meeting was not born of any issue of arrogance. It was not born of any sense of arrogance. It was an adjustment to the current situation that we have. I want to refer to the statement by, one of the statements by Honorable Member Bassett Williams, in which he talked about there is no way that these bills can come back in this session. But I think I'm not so sure what he meant. A session normally is, unless something's happened, is the full 5 years period of our government. Unless some particular, a session doesn't end at the point of recess. A session doesn't end at the point of recess. And on the question, and he spoke about not being able to bring it back. But it was he who last Thursday took us to standing order number 112. Is it 100? And he did some things that I'm not so sure if they ever occurred before in any other parliament. Not in this one. There, in 112 says that any one or more of these standing orders, they after notice or leave of the speaker is suspended on a motion made by a member at any sitting. So I wonder about him appearing to have closed his mind to a minor happening. I wonder about it. When he has closed his mind to a minor happening at all.
You recognize one, man. You tell your body years, and you didn't speak to him.
This parliament, you said from no.
So, Mr. Speaker, you said a lot on this motion. Our government is prepared to say that we meant no arrogance in the step we took yesterday, seeking to postpone this meeting. We did it all to try to ensure that we have both a minor and the local government election.
Thank you. Honorable members, before I put the motion to the vote, because it is a motion and it has to be voted on, and it doesn't say the first is that for this 10th Parliament, I believe that if it ever is to have even a chance at success, it must be characterized by engagement and by good faith. If not this 10th Parliament, and by that I mean every member thereof will be considered a failure. And so, for me, every effort should be made at engagement, pursuit, and a dialogue. And that the door to that should never 201. Even in the height of protests and violent incidents and things happening, there were talks ongoing into wee hours in the morning. And for 3 years thereafter, teams of both parties met every day at a hotel and under the aegis of CARICOM and the CARICOM facilitator, and we spoke for 3 years non-stop, and were able to bring about many of the reforms that we have. The second thing I'd like to say is that the reasons set out in your letter on the Prime Minister yesterday were good and sufficient. I believe that the manner in which it was done is what I believe is what caused more consternation. And in future, we ought to try to find consensus on matters like this. And whatever may have happened in the past, I don't believe that any member on his or her own, or the government or the opposition, can just simply say that Parliament is adjourned. It is if I can use an analogy, if as a lawyer in a matter, or as a claimant, I just inform the judge that the matter that you have on Tuesday morning, Your Honor, will no longer be heard. It will now be heard on the 13th of December. Without even saying, well, look, Your Honor, I have good and sufficient reasons why I'm not able to proceed, and I'm asking for an adjournment. And I think that, so it is not the content, but I believe the manner. The third thing I'd like to say is that I'm going to research it, but I don't believe, with respect, that the government has any prerogative to call off Parliament or a sitting. And likewise, Mr. Williams, I don't believe that the Speaker has any authority, except as set out in Standing Order 8.1, to call off or call on Parliament. Except, no, Mr. Williams said that my authority was being usurped by this letter. No authority resided in me when it came to calling off. I have only powers to call in between dates that are set. But where a sitting is being adjourned or postponed, the Speaker has no authority. So in no way was I slighted, or did I feel that any powers of mine were being usurped. And I needed to say that. In terms of whether or not bills and motions that have been defeated, or whether or not they're negative or otherwise can be returned, I agree, and I believe that yes, Standing Order 112 is a powerful standing order and can be utilized by this House. I also believe, and that the Constitution says, Article 165 of our Constitution says that subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the National Assembly may regulate its own procedure and make rules for that purpose. So nothing is impossible where the vital motion is concerned, or the debt ceiling. And I invite all parties to continue pursuing some resolution in the matter. And just by way of recollection, and some members, Mrs. Bakker and others may recall this, 2 incidents. One was when in 1997, the People's National Congress members had boycotted sittings, and 4 sittings had been missed. When it is mandatory that a member must be present for 4 sittings, except he or she has been given leave by the presiding officer. And it had been discovered that we did not have that leave. And this House did what it had to do to ensure that on the 15th of July, when we entered Parliament, that constitutional provision and standing orders were not held against us. The second instance, which in fact I knew some research, was when again I came up with that, I won't name the other members, but when I and a number of other persons I believe were cited for breach of privilege at the Ocean View Hotel.
And the matter was brought before the Committee of Privileges, the Privileges Committee. And again, it was arranged and negotiated as part of the return of the party to the House that that matter would go a certain course would be adopted. And in fact, nothing ever became of the matter. So the point is that nothing is etched in stone, and we are expected to make laws for the good order, peace, and good government of this country, and that is what the people expect of us. And that is the banner that we must hold ahead and behind us at all times when we make decisions. Because we make decisions not for ourselves, but for the people who elected us to do so. So with those words said, I invite the House to consider the motion whether or not we should adjourn today. We've already been going at it for way over an hour. And the motion is put. Those in favor of an adjournment without any other business being discussed, say aye. Aye. Those against, say no. No. I believe the noes result be happy. The division is called. Could I have the division then, please? Honourable members, the division having been called for and the vote taken, 32 members voted against the motion, 27 members voted for the motion. The motion is therefore not carried. The House will not be adjourned and we will continue. On the point of adjournment, I omitted to mention that in, I believe it was February of last year, I guess we were ruling on this very matter of adjournment, number 4 of 2012, if any member wishes to have a copy, please indicate. But I've given a ruling on adjournment. This was after the Honourable Prime Minister had sought to adjourn the date, and Ms. Ali had amended that motion, and I had ruled that Ms. Ali had the right to amend Prime Minister's motion. And I had gone into some discussion on the right to adjourn from day to day and how an adjournment should be used. Thank you. Mr. Clark, we proceed with the argument.
Statements by ministers including public statements, personal explanations, requests for leave to move the adjournment of the National Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance.
Honourable members, very early this morning at before 5, I received a request from the Honourable Leader of the Opposition to move this House on a matter of definite urgent public importance. After giving due consideration to the request, I have informed the Honourable Leader of the Opposition that I cannot accede to his request because it does not meet the standards of what is required by this particular standing order, and having regard to precedents of my predecessors and my own consideration of this matter last year, July. But I did indicate that I would allow the Honourable Leader of the Opposition to make a brief statement, as indeed my predecessors had done from time to time when requests such as this were not allowed. Honourable Leader of the Opposition, in view of the fulsome debate we've had on the matter, I still invite you to make your statement, which I'm sure you prepared.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Notwithstanding the fulsome debate, I must say that the opposition felt the matter was a serious one, which threatened the democracy of our country and, of course, the functioning of this House. I start with quotation. Mr. Speaker, it is the common fate of the indolent to see their rights become a prey to the active. The condition upon which God had given liberty to man is eternal vigilance. Which condition, if he break, servitude is at once the consequence of his crime and the punishment of his guilt. These are the words of John Philip Curran, written in 1790, over 2 centuries ago. Mr. Speaker, any threat to our liberty is a definite matter of public importance. Any threat to our civil rights is a definite matter of public importance. Any threat to the integrity and independence of this honorable House is a definite matter of public importance. Any threat to the laws and regulations and conventions which protect this House definite matter of public importance. When therefore, Mr. Speaker, this National Assembly, properly constituted, discusses, deliberates, and decides on a matter, on any matter, that determination is not the whim of 32 or 33 persons. It is the will of 175,000 Guyanese. When therefore anyone presumes or pretends to possess powers designed to override or overrule the public will, the entire people must be vigilant. They must be vigilant to protect their rights, to protect their freedoms, which they have fought for 250 years, since 1763. When therefore, Mr. Speaker, less than 24 hours before this Honorable House was due to reconvene, an attempt was made without consultation with the opposition, without the concurrence of the majority, to postpone the sitting, whether it's by 13 days, or 30 days, or 30 weeks. We must all be vigilant to prevent the miscarriage. We must preserve our liberty, and we must protect our rights. My learned colleague, the Honorable Basil Williams, has already spoken of the importance of Standing Order 8.2, and I need not repeat. But the emphasis is on the authority of the Speaker. The authority of the Speaker, who must perceive what is in the public interest to make a change. Our presence here today, Mr. Speaker, is very important, certainly to the opposition. And we are happy to be joined by some elements of the government side. Our presence here today, Mr. Speaker, signifies that we have averted a democratic disaster. We have averted a legislative travesty. We have averted a constitutional calamity. 8 years ago, Mr. Speaker, Sir Michael Davies warned of the danger of domination of the legislative branch by the executive. The pus of the gangrene still seems to be oozing. We must heal the injury today. We must cure the disease of domination and the desire by some to dominate. We must seal the wound. Mr. Speaker, let eternal vigilance be our watchword. Let this honorable House remain the free voice of the population and protect us from the vice of domination. Thank you.
Motions relating to the business or sittings of the National Assembly and moved by Minister. Introduction of bills. Public business. Government's business.
Honourable members, the leader of the government has indicated its desire not to proceed with any of its business today, which will take us to the only remaining item on the agenda, that is a motion standing in the name of the leader of the opposition on maritime accidents and some of them resulting in deaths. The leader of the opposition, I believe, is ready to proceed with that motion. Yes. I therefore, sir, advise you to
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I call on this honorable House to support the motion in my name, which calls for the appointment of a commission of inquiry into the incidents of maritime and riverine incidents, injuries, and deaths between 1999 and the present time. It is understandable that some members of the government have no interest in this matter.
Right, that's right.
But, Mr. Speaker, we are interested in the preservation of the lives of our citizens. And many of the motions and questions that we ask concern the human condition. The falls are important, the airports are important, but most important, the lives of our citizens. To paraphrase the famous book, Mr. Speaker, Guyana's rivers are our liquid history, the liquid history of this nation. Our three colonies, Demerara, Essequibo, and Berbice, that were half a second. The three colonies which were established by the Dutch over 2 centuries ago were named after our rivers. And after 1831, when the colonies were united and they became counties, they preserved the names.
He's listening along.
They preserved the names of the 3 rivers. And our rivers have been embedded in song and folklore, in this house to express sympathy to the surviving victims, persons who have suffered injury because of these accidents, and certainly to the families of those who have died. We call in this house to assert the responsibility of the state, in particular, the Ministry of Public Works, R2P, the responsibility to protect our citizens. We call on the President of our Republic to appoint a commission of inquiry to investigate maritime and riverine accidents over the last 13 years. A commission of inquiry to make recommendations for safe travel on this country's historic waters.
We will respond to specific issues relating to safety on the river. The outfitting of new transoms on the boats and of an inner transom, which related to the incident which happened on the Quarantine River some years ago, where some of our people lost their lives. The engine got knocked out with the back of the boat and the boat spun. There was no inner transom. We responded to that. I required the Maritime Administration Department to redesign the boats. An inner transom was fitted. Flotation devices are fitted in every boat now. It never existed before. You never had an inner transom. You never had flotation devices in each and every boat. We have put in place 2 for the water taxi service, but perhaps some 80% or more of all the service operators. We have put tops on the boats. They are covers, they are life jackets, both for adults and children. They are regular inspections. They are persons at the steadings to count and record the passengers on each and every boat. Never in the history of the country that you have manifests and that the operators in the associations have a safety representative who record this type of information. And I'm surprised that the honorable members, who I believe also use this type of service, are seeming to be completely unaware of these initiatives. with the expansion in response to the higher gold prices, the movement on the rivers, particularly in the rainy season. We have taken the effort to engage with our people in the handing out of leaflets, of brochures, of having our river navigation officers go out there and hold seminars with them, of having weekly visits going around on the circuit to the various associations, the various stellings where the passengers operate to improve safety consciousness. We are aware that we have moved to from a situation when I went into the interior the first time, the fastest boat or the largest engine you would have had on any boat would have been a 25 horsepower. You usually had a 10, 12, every load or Volvo engine on the boat. Most persons who had a boat, or yes, an Archimedes engine, that's right. 10, 12 Archimedes engine. The biggest engine was a 25 horsepower, and that was in the early 70s. Over the years, and here and now, we have a situation where much younger people, much larger boats, the typical range of engine size is between 75 to 150 horsepower. 75 to 150 horsepower, there are also 204-stroke engines. And we have been working hard to put the associations in good order, to have them have safety net, to relate with those on the committees, to have quarterly safety review meetings with respect to the activities on the river. Recently, we have been putting in additional safety signs on the Mazaruni River, particularly on the Pomeroon and on the Maruca rivers, in addition to the other buoys and markers which we have in various areas on the road. And I said this is in addition to the regular weekly patrols and visits on the Koiguni, Mazaruni, Pomeroon, Bariba, and Essequibo rivers.